What if doing the right thing didn't make people like you, but instead made some people hate you? What if following truth meant standing against the values of the world around you? And what if Jesus warned his followers ahead of time that faith would not always be welcomed? In the Gospel of John, chapter 15, verses 18 through 25, Jesus shares a difficult but important truth with his disciples. These words come during the final night before his arrest. The atmosphere is heavy. The disciples are listening carefully, knowing that something significant is about to happen. Only moments earlier, Jesus had spoken about love, friendship, and the importance of remaining connected to him, like branches connected to a vine. But now the tone shifts. He begins to prepare them for a reality they will soon face. Jesus says, "If the world hates you, keep in mind that it hated me first." These words might have surprised the disciples. They had witnessed crowds gathering to hear Jesus teach. They had seen people amazed by his miracles. But Jesus knew something deeper about human nature. Not everyone welcomes truth. Some people resist it. The world that Jesus speaks about here does not simply mean the planet or humanity in general. In this context, it represents a system of values that stands in opposition to God's truth. It describes attitudes driven by pride, selfishness, and a rejection of God's authority. When someone chooses to follow Jesus, their life begins to reflect different priorities. Love instead of hatred, humility instead of pride, truth instead of deception. And sometimes those differences create tension. Jesus explains this clearly. If you belong to the world, it would love you as its own. In other words, people tend to accept those who share the same values and attitudes. When someone challenges those values, even indirectly, it can cause discomfort or resistance. But Jesus continues, "As it is, you do not belong to the world, but I have chosen you out of the world." This statement reveals something powerful about identity. The disciples are no longer defined by the patterns of the world around them. They belong to Christ, and that difference will sometimes lead to rejection. Jesus then reminds them of a principle he had already taught. A servant is not greater than his master. If people persecuted Jesus, they should expect that some will treat his followers the same way. This was not meant to discourage them. Instead, it was meant to prepare them. Jesus wanted them to understand that opposition does not mean failure. In fact, it can sometimes be evidence that they are faithfully representing him. Throughout history, many of God's messengers experienced rejection. The prophets were often ignored or opposed. Even when they spoke truth meant to guide and protect the people, their message was not always welcomed. Jesus himself faced criticism, hostility, and eventually violence. Yet his mission was never defined by popularity. It was defined by obedience to the Father. Jesus then explains the deeper reason behind the world's hostility. "They will treat you this way because of my name, for they do not know the one who sent me." This statement reveals that rejection of Jesus is ultimately connected to a misunderstanding or rejection of God himself. Those who oppose Christ often believe they are defending their own beliefs, traditions, or authority. But Jesus shows that the root of the conflict is spiritual. It is about recognizing the truth of who God is and what he has revealed. Jesus then makes a statement that may seem challenging at first. "If I had not come and spoken to them, they would not be guilty of sin, but now they have no excuse for their sin." What he means is that his teaching brought clarity. Before his arrival, many people lived with limited understanding of God's will, but Jesus revealed the truth more fully. With greater knowledge comes greater responsibility. The people who heard Jesus teach and witnessed his works were given a clear opportunity to respond. Some believed, others rejected him. Jesus continues by explaining that anyone who hates him also hates the Father. This statement emphasizes the unity between Jesus and God. To reject one is to reject the other. Then he reminds the disciples of the powerful evidence that had been presented. "If I had not done among them the works no one else did, they would not be guilty of sin." Jesus performed miracles that demonstrated compassion, healing, and authority over nature itself. The blind received sight. The sick were healed, the hungry were fed, even the dead were raised. These signs were meant to point people toward the truth about who he was. But even with that evidence, some still refused to believe. Jesus says, "As it is, they have seen. and yet they have hated both me and my Father. This reveals the seriousness of rejecting truth when it is clearly presented. Sometimes people imagine that if they had seen miracles themselves, belief would have been easy. But the story of Jesus shows that miracles alone do not always change hearts. Faith involves more than witnessing extraordinary events. It involves humility, openness, and a willingness to accept truth. Jesus then explains that these events fulfill what was written in the scriptures. They hated me without reason. This line echoes words from the Psalms, showing that even the rejection of the Messiah had been foretold. From a human perspective, the hatred directed at Jesus seemed senseless. His life was marked by compassion and service. He healed the sick, welcomed the outcasts, and spoke about love, forgiveness, and mercy. Yet some people still responded with hostility. The disciples listening to Jesus that night could not yet imagine the full weight of what he was saying. Soon they would see their teacher arrested, falsely accused, and crucified. They would experience fear and confusion. But these words would remain in their memory, helping them understand that what happened was not outside of God's plan. After the resurrection, the disciples began to preach the message of Jesus openly. And just as Jesus had warned, their message was not always welcomed. Some people responded with joy and faith. Others responded with anger. Many of the early followers of Christ faced persecution. They were mocked, imprisoned, and sometimes even killed because of their faith. Yet the message continued to spread. Why? Because the disciples remained convinced that the truth they carried was worth sharing, even in the face of opposition. Their courage did not come from their own strength. It came from their deep conviction that Jesus was who he claimed to be, the Son of God who came to bring light into the world. This passage from John chapter 15 offers an important lesson for believers today. In many places, following Christ may not bring widespread approval. Living by values like honesty, forgiveness, humility, and faith can sometimes make a person stand out in a culture that prioritizes different goals. There may be moments when choosing truth feels uncomfortable. Moments when standing for what is right invites criticism. Moments when faith is misunderstood. But Jesus' words remind his followers that such experiences should not come as a surprise. They are part of the journey of discipleship. At the same time, this passage does not encourage hostility toward the world. Jesus consistently taught his followers to respond with love. Even when facing rejection, they were called to show compassion and grace. Their mission was not to defeat their opponents, but to share the truth about God's love. This balance is important. Believers are not called to seek conflict or provoke opposition unnecessarily. But they are also not called to hide their faith simply to gain approval. Instead, they are invited to live with integrity, reflecting the character of Christ in both words and actions. When people see genuine love, patience, and humility, it can challenge assumptions about faith. Sometimes the most powerful testimony is not a debate or argument, but a life that quietly reflects the teachings of Jesus. The message of John 15 reminds us that truth and love often travel together. Jesus spoke honestly about the reality of opposition, but he also called his followers to continue loving others. Even those who rejected him were still objects of his compassion. From the cross, Jesus prayed for those who were responsible for his suffering. "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." That kind of love is rare, but it is also the kind of love that has the power to transform hearts. The disciples would eventually understand that following Christ meant more than enjoying moments of inspiration. It meant carrying his message into a world that would respond in many different ways. Some would welcome the message with open hearts, others would resist it. Yet the mission remained the same: to bear witness to the truth, to live in love, and to remain faithful to the one who called them. Today, the words of Jesus in John 15 verse 18 to 25 continue to speak with clarity. They remind believers that faith is not measured by popularity or approval. It is measured by faithfulness, remaining committed to truth, continuing to love others, and trusting that God is at work even when the path becomes difficult. Thank you for watching this video. If this message from John 15 about the world's reaction to the disciples helped you better understand the challenges and courage involved in following Christ, please like this video, follow the Holy Path Insights channel, and share it with others who want to grow deeper in their understanding of the Bible. Your support helps bring these powerful biblical insights to people around the world.